Imagine this. The world's most controversial man, Andrew Tate, a figure loved by millions and hated by millions more, sitting in front of a microphone, eyes steady, voice calm, saying something that shakes the internet to its core. Not about money, not about women, not even about power, but about faith. About Islam. The same man who built an empire on masculinity, freedom, and rebellion, suddenly talking about submission, prayer, and peace. For most people, that's a contradiction. For Tate, it's a revelation. He doesn't say it like a preacher. He says it like a man who's seen the world, tasted its pleasures, fought its battles, and realized something deeper, that despite all the noise, all the chaos, all the temptations, the only thing that brings real strength, real purpose is Islam, and that's where it gets powerful. Because when a man who conquered the algorithm starts talking about conquering the self, people listen. He says Islam isn't just another religion. It's the last truth standing in a world of confusion. And he's not wrong that the modern world sells distractions, not direction. It worships desire, not discipline. But Islam flips the script. It tells you that peace isn't found in pleasure. It's found in purpose. That freedom isn't about doing whatever you want, but mastering what you want. And that's exactly what Tate has been saying for years, even before he embraced the faith, that a man without discipline is a slave to his own desires. That strength comes from control, not chaos. And when he found Islam, it all connected. Suddenly, his message wasn't just philosophy. It was faith. He saw that everything he had been chasing, honor, loyalty, brotherhood, clarity, had already been defined 400 years ago. While the world called him toxic, Islam gave his message context. It showed that real masculinity isn't arrogance, it's responsibility. That real power isn't domination. It's obedience to God. And that's why when Tate said Islam is the only religion strong enough to survive what's coming, it hit people hard. Because deep down, everyone knows he's right. The West is collapsing from within. Men are lost, families are broken. Truth is relative. Faith is mocked. And in the middle of that darkness, Islam stands unshaken like a lighthouse that never goes out. Tate calls it the last resistance, the final line between chaos and order. And he's not talking about violence or politics. He's talking about moral strength, the ability to say no in a world that tells you yes to everything. The courage to pray when everyone else scrolls. The power to submit when ego tells you to rebel. That's what makes Islam different. It's not built on trends. It's built on truth. And that's why even people who hate Tate, who can't stand his confidence, find themselves watching, listening, questioning. Because no matter how much they try to cancel him, they can't cancel what he's saying. And the numbers prove it. Every time he mentions Islam, conversions rise. Every time he posts a clip about prayer, thousands comment that they started praying too. It's like a spark lighting 1,000 more. He doesn't ask people to convert. He asks them to think, to look at the chaos around them and ask themselves if this is really freedom. Depression rates exploding, families falling apart, people with everything yet feeling nothing. And then he asks, what if the solution isn't more pleasure but more purpose? What if submission to God is the ultimate freedom? That's when the silence hits, because he's not preaching from weakness. He's speaking from experience. He had the cars, the mansions, the fame, the attention, the money. He lived the dream everyone's chasing. And yet he says, none of it gave me peace. Islam did. That sentence alone flipped the script for millions, because it came from someone who had tasted both worlds, the world of desire and the world of discipline, and chose the latter. When he bowed his head in prayer, it wasn't a surrender to religion, it was a surrender to reality. The reality that life has rules, that morality isn't a trend, that God is real. And the way he talks about it isn't academic. It's raw. He tells men that Islam gives them structure, women that Islam gives them value, and society that Islam gives it balance. And suddenly, a generation raised on confusion finds clarity. It's no coincidence that Tate's message resonates with the youth. They see a man unafraid to challenge modern lies. A man who says the truth even when it costs him. A man who says Allahu Akbar not for likes but for life. And that's why the system fears him. Because he's proof that influence can't be controlled when it's backed by conviction. You can ban a man, but you can't ban the truth he represents. And that truth is spreading faster than ever. Across London, New York, Lagos, Dubai, men are listening. Women are reflecting. People are waking up because in Tate's voice they hear something the world forgot. Certainty, and that's what Islam gives. Certainty in an age of confusion, strength in an age of weakness, direction in an age of distraction. So when Andrew Tate says Islam will be the future, it's not arrogance. It's observation. The world is crumbling. Ideologies are failing. And yet Islam is thriving. He sees it, he says it. And now millions believe it. Because when the man who had everything chooses faith over fame, it makes you wonder, what does he know that we don't? And maybe that's the real question. Not why Andrew Tate became Muslim, but why the rest of us haven't yet seen what he saw. They said he was chasing attention, that his faith was just another performance. But people who truly listened, who watched the way his tone changed, the way his eyes carried weight instead of pride, they knew something real had shifted. Andrew Tate wasn't chasing views anymore. He was chasing truth. You could see it when he spoke about peace, not from a place of dominance, but from humility. He said something that silenced even his critics. I had everything, but I didn't have peace. Now I pray 5 times a day, and I finally sleep in peace. That line hit harder than any motivational speech he ever gave, because in a world that worships success, a man admitting that success means nothing without God is revolutionary. And people felt it. They felt that this wasn't the same Tate who used to mock weakness. This was a man who found out that the greatest strength is surrendering to the Creator. His followers, young men across the planet, began asking themselves uncomfortable questions. What's the point of power without purpose? What's the value of fame if your soul is empty? And slowly his words began to sound less like rebellion and more like revelation. When he talked about Islam, it wasn't through the lens of religion. It was through the lens of logic. He said, if something is true, it remains true whether you believe in it or not. That's how he saw Islam, not as an opinion, but as a fact. The West builds illusions. Islam builds reality. And the more he traveled, the more he saw the difference. He said when he visited Dubai or Istanbul, he could feel peace in the air. Not the fake peace of money and pleasure, but the peace of moral order. People with less material wealth, but more inner calm. Men who still protected their families, women who still carried dignity, children who still respected elders. It made him realize that the strength of a civilization isn't in its skyscrapers, it's in its submission. That's when he started warning the world. He said, the West will destroy itself not through war, but through weakness, through the loss of belief, the addiction to comfort, to celebration of sin. A nation that mocks God, he said, has already declared war on its own future. Those weren't just words. They were prophecy, because everything he said was already happening. Depression rising, marriage collapsing, gender confusion spreading, faith disappearing. And yet, Islam stands firm, unshaken like a mountain that refuses to bow to the wind. He said, Islam is the only system that still demands respect, still defines truth, still refuses to compromise. And that's exactly why it scares people, because it cannot be controlled. It cannot be corrupted. It cannot be rewritten. The Quran isn't trending. It's eternal. And Tate knew that. He said, you can't edit God's words to fit your feelings. You change your heart to fit His truth. That's the message that's making millions think again. Even his haters can't deny the logic. You can argue with opinions, but you can't argue with results. Islam gives discipline, Islam gives brotherhood. Islam gives direction. Everything the modern man has lost. And when Tate speaks about it, it doesn't sound foreign. It sounds familiar because it's what every soul is craving. Stability, structure, strength, the same values his brand was built on. Now rooted in something divine. He says Islam doesn't cancel masculinity. It completes it. It doesn't silence women. It honors them. It doesn't suppress freedom. It refines it. And that's why the more people try to attack Islam, the more it grows. Because truth doesn't die under pressure, it multiplies. Tate calls this the age of awakening. He says people are tired of being lied to. They're tired of fake happiness, fake morality, fake freedom. They want something real. And real doesn't mean easy. It means eternal. That's why he says Islam will rise. Not because Muslims are perfect, but because their system is. Because no matter how much time passes, the Quran still fits every era, every mind, every heart. That's divine design. And Tate's just one of the millions realizing it. He says, "The world told me I was free, but I was a prisoner to my own desires. Islam freed me from myself." That confession alone shook the internet because it's rare to see a man who admits he needed saving. Not from others, but from his own ego. And maybe that's what faith really is. The ability to admit that you're not God, that your strength has limits, that your heart needs direction. In Tate's story, people see their own reflection, the struggle for meaning in a meaningless world. And when he says Islam gave him that meaning, people listen not because he's famous, but because he's honest. He doesn't romanticize it. He says it's hard. Waking for Fajr, controlling your anger, lowering your gaze, it's all a fight. But he says that's the point. Islam doesn't make life easy. It makes you strong. And that strength is what the world is starving for. A generation lost in comfort needs challenge. A society drowning in ego needs surrender. And that's why his message hits like thunderdaw. It reminds us that true power begins when you bow down. Because when you finally put your head to the ground, you rise higher than you ever did standing tall. They tried to silence him, but silence only made his message louder. Every ban, every headline, every smear campaign, it all backfired because people didn't see a criminal. They saw a man punished for saying what others were too afraid to say. Andrew Tate wasn't just defending Islam. He was defending truth itself, and truth has a strange power. It doesn't need permission to spread. The more they attacked him, the more people got curious. What is it about Islam that makes the system so afraid? Why does a man with everything to lose risk it all for a faith the media loves to misunderstand? That curiosity became a wildfire. Millions started searching, reading, watching scholars, listening to the Quran, and what they found wasn't the monster the headlines described. It was beauty, simplicity, purpose, order. They saw that Islam wasn't chains. It was structure. It didn't enslave the mind. It liberated it. And Tate became the bridge between the confused and the curious. He spoke the language of the modern man, raw, direct, unapologetic. And suddenly faith didn't sound old. It sounded powerful. He said, Islam doesn't need to change for the world. The world needs to return to Islam. That sentence hit like a revelation because it reversed the entire narrative. The West keeps telling Muslims to modernize, to soften their edges, to compromise their morals, but Tate said, no, the moment you water down the truth to make it acceptable, it stops being the truth. That's what drew people in. Because deep down, everyone's tired of pretending, tired of smiling while feeling empty, tired of chasing freedom that feels like slavery. Tate spoke to that emptiness and gave it a name, faithlessness. He said, the West doesn't suffer from poverty. It suffers from purposelessness. And that's why no matter how rich it gets, it still feels poor. A man without God, he said, is a mansion without light. That line became a quote, then a movement. You saw it in comment sections, in podcasts, in clips that spread faster than any trend. Young men who once worshipped luxury started posting verses of the Quran. Influencers began saying Alhamdulillah instead of I'm grateful. It was like a shift in the air. A generation slowly remembering God. And it terrified the system because for decades the world sold rebellion as strength. Now Islam was redefining strength as obedience. Tate said something that captured it perfectly. The real revolution isn't against governments, it's against your own desires. That's why his message became unstoppable. It wasn't political. It was personal. He wasn't telling people to fight the world. He was telling them to fight themselves, to master the ego, to silence the noise, to remember the soul. That's Islam in essence. To discipline the heart before you conquer the world. And Tate lived it. Even his enemies saw the difference. His tone softened. His arrogance turned to conviction. His anger to clarity. He wasn't speaking from ego anymore, but from experience. He said, I found peace not because life got easier, but because I finally understood why I'm here. That's what faith does. It doesn't change your life. It changes your lens, and through that lens, everything looks different. Success becomes a test. Pain becomes purification. Loss becomes lesson. Suddenly the chaos makes sense. That's what Tate began teaching. He stopped motivating people to make money and started motivating them to find meaning. He said Islam is the only system that gives your life a manual, a framework that tells you how to live, how to treat your parents, how to spend your money, how to lead, how to love. It doesn't leave you lost. It guides you from the inside out. That's why he said Islam isn't just a religion, it's a solution. And that scares the modern world because a man who finds purpose can't be controlled. You can tempt him, but you can't break him. You can threaten him, but you can't own him. And that's the kind of strength Tate keeps preaching. Spiritual independence. The idea that real kings bow only to God. He says that's the secret of true power. Not wealth, not fame, but faith. Because faith gives you something no system can offer. Peace that can't be bought, purpose that can't be canceled, and truth that can't be twisted. The system runs on fear. Fear of losing comfort, fear of losing approval, but faith kills fear. A man who fears God fears nothing else. That's the message echoing across continents. Now in mosques, cafes, gyms, classrooms, people are quoting him not because he's perfect, but because he's proof that transformation is possible, that no matter how far you drift, you can always come back. That even a man who lived for this world can still find his soul before it's too late. That's why he says Islam isn't for angels, it's for fighters, for people trying to win the war within. And when he calls the Adhan echoing across the city skyline, the sound of discipline, people feel that because that's exactly what the world's missing. Discipline, direction, devotion. The kind of devotion that reminds you that you're not just flesh, you're spirit. And that's the message he's leaving behind. But the modern man doesn't need another motivational quote. He needs a connection to the divine.